Good morning, everybody. And if you're watching at home, glad to have you here with us. I'm going to sit today because if I stand, I may fall. This vertigo has been recurrent for 3 weeks now, and I don't get it, but this morning, for whatever reason, I'm just as dizzy as I can be. We'll see. It's going to be a whole lot of fun floating down a river dizzy. Jerry, I'm glad you're going with us. So Jerry's sermon this morning, and you know, I think we've all heard what he talked about the take usually on Peter going out the water. Quite honestly, I've always kind of looked at that as Peter and Peter's personality being such, he's always ready to jump right out. And you know, I think we've all seen this. You know, the parable of the sower. It talks about seed, and some of the seed is thrown on some ground that does not quite have enough nutrient in it, and it sprouts. But then what happens to it? It dies because it doesn't have a root system. And I think a little bit about that in belief that Peter exhibited. He's got the enthusiasm to get going, but I'm not sure he's got the enthusiasm to carry it through. I think life can be that way for all of us. In fact, I think my life kind of does this. There's times I think when my faith is really strong, and then there's times when I think my faith is not so strong. Y'all experience that. And I think about myself now compared to myself maybe 30, 40 years ago. And I ask, am I more of this or more of this? And I think I still do this. But at the same time, I think through the experience of difficult moments, through the experience of seeing God and knowing God has worked in my life as He's worked in yours, I think our faith does grow. There was a situation in a local medical facility here last Friday, where a young woman's parents were in, and she did not feel that her parent was getting the care that parent deserved. And I didn't know anything about it. I had no knowledge of it, but was asked to come over and see this person and see how they were doing. And so I'm totally innocent. I think I'm totally innocent of what's going on. I don't know. And I walked in the room and I see this older couple and talk to them and have a nice conversation. And they're just as kind as they could be, just as appreciative as they could be. And then they say, would you please call our daughter? I think she would like to talk to you, okay? And I call the daughter up and I say, my name is, and I was asked to see your father. I was told that there might be some difficulties here. And about 10 minutes later, after being cursed, just cursed in every way that you could be cursed. I mean, an absolute rant, okay? And I sat and listened to it, and I had it on the speaker, so there were a couple other witnesses that were behind me that were hearing all this. And they got done, and my comment was, and I'm telling you, it was hard to get a word in, but my comment was, I would sure like to, maybe I should call you back another time. Which was followed by 5 more minutes of, I'm not going to be any better the next time you call me, curse, 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 curse. And I sat there and was just silent. And she said, well, do you want to say anything? And I said, I'm not sure, but, and then I started telling her what I saw going on. And the conversation, actually, it improved incredibly, such that at the end of the conversation, she said, thank you, okay? And I hung up the phone, and the nurses just kind of looked at me in bewilderment, which is how did you take that? Okay. Now, let me just tell you something. I don't think 25, 30 years ago I would have taken that. I don't think I would have. But I did. Now, you all, there's some of you are younger, some of you are older in here. But you know what I'm telling you about. The experience of dealing with this, I think it does grow our faith. I think it grows our faith very much. When Jesus came in the book of Matthew is very much in my mind about who is Jesus. Matthew is trying to tell us and trying to teach us, he was teaching them, that Jesus was the Son of God. In this chapter 14, maybe we'll just read it here in a minute because some of you haven't. But chapter 14 starts off with Jesus doing miracles around his home. And the people begin asking a question. The question is, how is he able to do this? How is he able to do this? And then the next story is a story about, it's really a story about Herod and John the Baptist. And we find out that Herod has killed John the Baptist. Not really sure when that happened. It could have been months before, some people think, or it might have been a recent event. But at any rate, people are talking about, Herod has heard about Jesus, and he asked the question, could this be John the Baptist and he's raised from the dead or something? Could he be a ghost? Is that who he is? I mean, where did he get, why is he able to do this? Well, it must be that he's risen from the dead. See, the basic question that's being asked here still of the people is, who is Jesus? And where did he get this power? Right? Which I would consolidate that question. I'd say the question is really, and it's got to be on their mind. I think it's got to be on their mind is Jesus God or something? That's really what the question is. Is Jesus God or something? Well, Matthew continues to reveal that because the next story, we've got Jesus, he's being told about John the Baptist's death, which is, I think, the first time Jesus heard about it. We think about, doesn't Jesus know everything? He's the Son of God. That's a whole other conversation. I think it's news to Jesus. Jesus just heard that his cousin has been killed, and this is a bad death. I mean, John's had his head cut off. It's not been an accident. It's been a horrible thing. And Jesus wants to go, and Jesus wants to pray. So Jesus is headed over the coastline to pray, and the problem is all these people kind of figure out where he's going. So all the people converge on Jesus, who is wanting to pray, and Jesus has, I'm going to say, he has compassion on those people. And he preaches to them. I'm saying it's coming to the near end of the day, and you got all these people there, and Jesus is wore out. And Jesus says, look, they got to have something to eat. So Jesus, you know about the 5 loaves and the 2 fishes. It's recorded, I think, in every gospel. And you ask yourself, what's the purpose of that? Well, God not only ministers to our spiritual needs, he ministers to our physical needs. In fact, I don't think God separates those two things. I think they're two things. They're the same thing. He ministers to us, to our whole person. He does that. The people disperse. Jesus goes to pray, finally gets his time, where I'm thinking that he's, meditating on John's life, thanking God for John. What would Jesus do? And then Jesus decides, let's go find these disciples. The disciples have already left. They're out. What I read was a couple of miles, okay? And you got a rough sea. And so somewhere in that 4th watch, Romans divided the night into 4 watches. 6 to 9, 9 to 12, 12 to 3, 3 to 6. This is the last. I'd have been asleep, okay, myself. Maybe not. This boat's really probably getting it. And here comes Jesus walking on water. Okay. And we can get off on the Peter story, which I think Jerry's covered that pretty well. But the deal is, these people among the chaos of the sea see Jesus. And what does Jesus do? He calms. It's the second time he's done it. I think back in chapter 8 he did it also, right? In that, Skip, you think of that? Chapter 8, where he's, peace be still, that statement, okay? So the sea is settled. And something very peculiar here happens.
Correct.
The very first time, was it chapter 8? Yeah. The very, very first time, what did the disciples say? What did they say about Jesus?
Truly you are the Son of God.
Truly you are the Son of God. First time it said. First time it said. And in saying that he is the Son of God, what do? What do?
Worship him.
They worship. They worship. So they have two songs, a prayer song and sermon, and then the invitation, right? They worship. What does here, what does they worship God, what does it mean when it says they worship God? What do you think, Joe?
I think they're just maybe singing praises or you know, just claiming how good he was and everything he created. Just basically talking to him. So that's what Jesus did all the time in prayer, you know. So.
I think so, Joe, but I want to think it's something just a little more than that.
Praise.
I think they're in total awe that this is the Son of God.
If so,
That realization
I've
for
got-
that moment.
I've got to read something that is really, I think, pretty neat. Margaret, who's the guy I asked you if you had the book on today?
Max Lucado.
Yeah, Max
Don't say Lucado.
Max Lucado. Max Lucado. Max Lucado, he wrote this. This is a commentary that sometimes I use. Michael J. Wilkins. And he quotes Max Lucado on this thing. He said, I had never seen Jesus as I saw him then. I had seen him as powerful. I had seen him as wise. I had witnessed his authority and marveled at his abilities. But what I witnessed last night, I know I'll never forget. I saw God. The God who can't sit still when the storm is too strong. The God who lets me get frightened enough to need him and then comes close enough for me to see him. The God who uses my storms as his path to come to me. I saw God. It took a storm for me to see him, but I saw him, and I'll never be the same. I thought that was really, really neat. I've not read a lot of Max myself. Very, very popular. A number of years ago, tremendously popular. I've never read that, but I thought that really struck me as being incredible. And it woke me up when I was thinking about this last night, how to present this. I was thinking about how it is in our lives that we come to see God ourselves. And in those times, are we drawn to worship him? And what does that look like? That's what I was thinking deeply about.
You know, Stephen, this Matthew 14 text, I don't think we need to overlook whatever all's going on with Peter. You know, Peter says, Lord, if it is you, command me to come to you on the water. And So it's the little faith, not so much about the impetuous Peter or the other, it's more about, he said, if you're the Lord, let me come to you, and Jesus says, come, and then when he gets out there, then he, you know, he kind of loses sight of that, and his sinking kind of reflects on, you know, you said, walk if you're the Lord,
Yeah.
but he's not walking very
So,
well.
yeah, I hear you, Randy, and I agree with that. I'm gonna split that in two, okay? There's a part about Peter where Jesus says, come on, okay? And Peter is right up there and walking, okay? And I like what Jerry said. I think that's more about Peter than it is about anybody else, okay? You know, I can do this, I can do it, I can do it, I can do it, okay? Well, and this is a guy who just said, if it is you, okay? And I'm also thinking it's a Peter that says, if you really are God, there's still, it's still not 100%, all right?
Sure.
But then, when I think Peter sees God, okay, when Peter sees Jesus as God, it's when he has fallen through that water, okay, and he's going to drown, and Jesus grabs him, okay? I mean, Jesus grabs him, and the horror of getting ready to drown in that chaos, the chaos of the sea, and Jesus grabs him. So, just for a moment, I would ask all of you to just think for a moment in your life when you think Jesus grabbed a hold of you. Just think about that. When was it that you saw Jesus in a way you'd never seen him before? Your eyes were really open. Somebody want to share? Okay, Ed.
I had such blocked the brain one 9 years ago. I was unconscious for 5 weeks. God healed me of all of it. My prayer at my bed. He said, I woke up screaming, halfway through the church. He said, shut it all room. God healed me of shut blocked the brain. He healed me of shut blocked the brain. My grandma prayed for me at my bed. She said, woke up screaming, halfway through the church. She said, she shouted all in the room. I was unconscious for 5 weeks.
That was when you were a child, Ed?
This is 1 9 years old.
You're able to see that. Well, thank you for sharing that, Ed.
I can tell I ever had it.
Thank you, Ed.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Somebody else want to share?
I remember, when I got awareness, not quite what you're saying, but when I knew God was there, and it was not so much a rescue as just a realization, 16, 17 years old, Michigan Christian Bible Camp. Every evening, you know, you have a big bonfire and close with a devotional. And we had just sung My God and I. I still can't sing that hardly without tears, but looked up and just the magnitude of the night and the stars. I grew up in Detroit City, so you didn't see stars like that in the city. And we were by the lake, and I looked up, and I just felt, and I knew that there was God. I still can't talk about it hardly, but that awareness that there is truly, I mean, I grew up being taught, and,
Yeah, yeah,
but that personal awareness,
yeah.
the rescue came, Jesus' hand to me, and you all know, was during Bill's illness. And there were times that I just cried out,
Yeah.
and Jesus was there.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Somebody else?
July the 19th, 1991. I woke up in the middle of the night in St. Thomas Hospital. I did not know where I was. I just woke up in the middle of the night, seeing beds around me, two doctors standing over my table, over my bed, talking about, what had happened. And, I just realized God has saved me. And I woke up from a coma after being in a coma 8 days.
Yeah. That was,
God worked there
that was
in so
incredible.
many ways. And it's hard for me to talk about.
Yes.
But that night, I woke up in the middle of the night. Two doctors were standing over my bed discussing. And I didn't know where I was, what had happened. But I knew God had protected me.
You've heard me say this before. I saw your scan. I saw your scan, and I saw how horrible the scan was. I didn't give you a chance.
Well, I don't think
And
Dr. Allen
it was
told
just a
me
God
the
thing.
same
I truly think that.
Yeah.
Sure do. Somebody else.
Well, I've shared many times, I lost my second child. If I had not had God to comfort me, the night before I was going in to have this child that I knew would not survive. Whether it was born alive, we named him Samuel, he would not have lived beyond a month if he was able to even live that long because of a birth defect and I had to prepare that night to lose that child that I had carried for 9 months. It was very viable to me. He was very viable, and just the sorrow and the pain, the loss I knew I would face. It was very difficult, and spent the night in prayer and reading Psalms. And God was, and I had not been a Christian for a long time. I mean, I grew up believing in church, but I had really committed my life when I was to God, like when I was 20, I guess. And just to know that He was there, and would be with me during that time, was just such a comfort. And I don't know what I would have done otherwise if I had not had him, my belief in him.
So, what I got a lot out of this, I did see an emphasis on the traditional view of Peter on this, in that there is this incredible need to be able to truly focus on Jesus as God, and see God at work. Now, last week we talked a little bit about how some people, it seems, are just beyond seeing God. They're not going to see Him. They're blind to it, okay? And then I think there are those of us that aren't blind, but we have to be reminded. We have to be reminded to focus and to see God working in our lives. And I think that's true of all of us. Did any of you all ever catch yourself on your own talking to God? Do you ever catch yourself doing that? I think that's very, very important. I think periodically, I'll catch myself either hearing something on the road or when I'm driving, and I'll just, God, this just can't be true. Or God, please do such and such. You do that. And I think we kind of have to train ourselves to think in those terms. I think sometimes we need to remind ourselves that whatever situation we're in, that should not necessarily prevent us or cause us to not think about God or to think somehow or another God's not in charge. You know, it's so easy to think about God in bad times, isn't it? But do we think about God in good times? I'll tell you something. You know, it's a very, very easy time to talk to people about God, and it's a good time when they're threatened by some situation. Okay, a loss of a child, a loss of a parent, a loss of a spouse, a loss of a job. Those are peculiar times. But I think as we mature, we learn to think about God in good times too. We learn to, when good things happen to us, we take time and we say, thank you, God. Thank you for this, right? And we see God in those times. And when we truly recognize the goodness that we have in our lives because of God, we are called to worship Him. And back to this question of worship, okay? Back to this question of worship. I think the essence of worship is truly prostrating ourselves before God in reverence, recognizing He is God. He is the I am. Okay? I think that's the essence of worship. The essence of worship with, somebody have a Kleenex. The essence of worship to me, and it's great. I think a part of our worship is certainly the business of lifting one another up, of singing to one another. I think that's very, very important. But beyond that, or preceding that, I want to say, worship is about us seriously reminding one another out there that God is God. Jesus is God. We are there to worship the creator of our world, the creator of each of us here, the supreme ruler, all those things. He is love. He is creator. He is God. And that to me is what worship has to be. Okay? All right.
Steve, I was overcome this morning. Rachel Painter was sitting behind me,
Uh-huh.
and her voice, she heard such a beautiful voice in her singing, and it just was such a blessing to hear her. And then when Jerry mentioned immersion at the end of the sermon today, it brought back to me a quote that I'd heard from Don McLaughlin.
Uh-huh.
It's very good. He said, immersion, a one-word description of being in Christ, to be completely overwhelmed by Him, submerged in Him, drenched with Him. The question does not stop with, have you been immersed, but rather, are you still immersed in Christ?
Yeah, really neat thought right there. Yeah. Matthew 14. Connie's not here today. It was her day to start reading, you need to tell her.
Oh, really?
Okay? Yes. We ran out yesterday before she got her chance, okay? So in her absence today, would you like to?
Yeah.
Chapter 14, and I may interrupt you a little bit.
Okay.
Chances are good if you've been in here, you know I'm going to interrupt you, right?
Start at verse 1.
Yes, sir.
At that time, Herod,
Okay, So,
I can't work with you.
hey, let me just, yeah, hey, I was thinking about today, 10 questions, okay? And the first question was, how limited do you think the gene pool was in Herodias' family, okay? So, I started trying to write out the family tree for Herod, okay? And you all ought to do it, okay? It is the most messed up family tree that I've ever read in my life, okay? So you can start off before, but we'll start off with Herod the Great. Herod the Great, you know how many wives Herod the Great had? Now this is not the same time. These are, you have one, you dismiss her, you get another, okay? I think there's about 10 that are there, okay? About 10. Herod the Great, the saves a womanizer, oh boy, wow, okay. Herod the Great, I think, has 4 boys. And when Herod the Great dies, basically he leaves a piece of the kingdom to all 4 boys, all right? Well, we read this story here. This is not about Herod the Great. This is Herod Antipas. Herod Antipas. That's opposed to Herod Agrippa, who we read about in Acts, or Philip the Tetrarch. He comes up in one of them. And then there's another son, Archelaus, I think is his name, who named after his granddaddy, all right? This young woman who dances later on in front of Herod, okay, she is the daughter of Herodias by another husband, okay? It's the most messed up thing, and when Herod marries Herodias, Herodias had been married to his half-brother, and I think she's got a son that's married to his aunt. I'm just telling you, this is one messed up family, okay? Totally messed up. So when I read Herod, I see the word Herod. I'm just thinking there might be just, well, let's just call it not an excess of good genes there, okay? All right? I'll interrupt again. Go ahead.
At that time, Herod, I'm going to keep going, the Tetrarch heard the reports about Jesus, and he said to his attendants, "This is John the Baptist. He is risen from the dead. That is why miraculous powers are at work in him." Now Herod had arrested John and bound him and put him in prison because of Herodias, his brother Philip's wife. For John had been saying to him, "It is not lawful for you to have her." Herod wanted to kill John, but he was afraid of the people because they considered John a prophet. On Herod's birthday, the daughter of Herodias danced for the guests and pleased Herod so much that he promised with an oath to give her whatever she asked. Prompted by her mother, she said, "Give me here on a platter the head of John the Baptist." The king was distressed, but because of his oaths and his dinner guests, he ordered that her request be granted and had John beheaded in the prison. His head was brought in on a platter and given to the girl, who carried it to her mother. John's disciples came and took his body and buried it. Then they went and told Jesus.
Okay, hold on just a minute. Is this a horrible story? This is sick stuff, right? I mean, we're talking about sick people. It said when it said I was interested. It said Herod was. It said troubled. What does it say? Herod was what?
Distressed.
Distressed. What's that word distressed mean? I was trying to figure out, was Herod distressed? Why was he distressed?
Regret?
I don't think so.
You don't think so?
That's not what I got. I've been told that before, but I don't think that's what I got. What I read was this word was more akin with worried, concerned, and I'm thinking, why is that so? Well, the reason I'm thinking it was because he had killed him to begin with, was because he thought the people would react against it. So he's still upset of maybe what the repercussions of this is going to be. I don't think Herod gave one twit about John. All right, let's feed the 5,000.
Do you think he might have been, at least been a little repulsed to have a head on a tree?
No, not by what I've read. I got the Bible dictionary out and read on Herod a while, okay? This guy, I don't know if there's anything that would repulse this guy. I think he is just a very sinful lowlife. And, got a thing with heads, I guess. Yeah.
When Jesus heard what had happened, he withdrew by boat privately to a solitary place.
Can I stop you right there just for a moment? So if you just heard your cousin had had his head cut off, what's your response to that? What's Jesus' response? What's Jesus' response to Lazarus when Lazarus dies? He wept, okay? He cried. Why did he cry about Lazarus?
He was his friend.
Huh?
And he
He was
cried
his
and
friend.
cried.
He's getting ready to raise him from the dead. I mean, think he's worried about
The
Lazarus?
sisters, he knew the sisters were mourning.
Yes.
What?
He knew
He
the
felt
sisters
badly.
were mourning.
He felt badly for them.
So he's empathizing with those around him. I really like that better. I mean, he's going to take care of him right here.
He is, but he was still hurting himself. I don't think just because he could raise him from the dead, Lazarus was his friend too, and all of them. The
So he's
sisters.
sorry about it. Okay, all right.
Brokenhearted.
Debbie, you got me now.
I
Okay.
think Jesus.
What do you think? What's his response to John the Baptist's death?
He'd like to go be alone
Go privately.
and mourn him, so.
Jesus carries the depth, the crushing depth of feeling what death does to us. That's the mission. And he knows the plan of him to overcome death
You
for
think
us.
you think Jesus there felt sorry for John the Baptist?
I do. He was brutally murdered, if you want to call it that. I think he had to have some.
What does
Sympathy for that.
what does John the Baptist's death say about the plight of mankind? What's it say about how mankind is?
That they can be despicable.
They're despicable. I don't know. I just think there's got to be a lot of stuff going on in Jesus' mind right here, okay? And so Jesus wants to go and he wants to pray, talk to God about it, all right?
Well, it also signals a change in what's gonna happen to him too. I mean, he changed his whole mind, his ministry, he was about to take a different direction at that point too. He can't go back now,
So,
he's
yeah,
on.
yeah, Yeah.
His work as Messiah is picked up.
yes. Robert, continue.
Hearing of this, the crowds followed him on foot from the towns. When Jesus landed and saw a large crowd, he had compassion on them and healed their sick. As evening approached, the disciples came to him and said, "This is a remote place, and it's already getting late. Send the crowds away so they can go to the villages and buy themselves some food." But Jesus replied, "They do not need to go away. You give them something to eat." "We have here only 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish," they answered. "Bring them here to me," he said. And he directed the people to sit down on the grass. Taking the 5 loaves and the 2 fish and looking up to heaven, he gave thanks and broke the loaves. Then he gave them to the disciples, and the disciples gave them to the people. They all ate and were satisfied, and the disciples picked up 12 basketfuls of broken pieces that were left over. The number of those who ate was about 5,000 men, besides women and children. Immediately, Jesus made the disciples get into the boat and go on ahead of him to the other side while he dismissed the crowd.
Now, immediately, what's that all about? He immediately. I read that to say, Jesus went there in the first place to pray, right? And he's met by all these people. He has compassion on them. He takes care of those people. But I think Jesus is ready to go pray. Jesus knows he needs some time, right? So he dismisses the crowd. He tells the disciples, "You guys go ahead and get in the boat. I'm going to hang right here for a while," right? And then 23.
After he had dismissed them, he went up on a mountainside by himself to pray. Later that night he was there alone, and the boat was already a considerable distance from land, buffeted by the waves because the wind was against it. Shortly before dawn, Jesus went out to them, walking on the lake. When the disciples saw him walking on the lake, they were terrified. "It's a ghost," they said, and cried out in fear. But Jesus immediately said to them, "Take courage, it is I, don't be afraid."
And don't dismiss what Jerry talked about this morning. The God talk here, the God talk before the fire, the I am conversation. All right, I think that's pretty key. Jesus, I think they would have heard I am, and that would be that's an admission by Jesus that we have not necessarily heard before. I am the I am. They hear it.
"Lord, if it's you," Peter replied, "tell me to come to you on the water." "Come," he said. Then Peter got down out of the boat, walked on the water, and came toward Jesus. But when he saw the wind, he was afraid, and, beginning to sink, cried out, "Lord, save me." Immediately Jesus reached out his hand and caught him. "You of little faith," he said, "why did you doubt?" And when they climbed into the boat, the wind died down. Then those who were in the boat worshipped him, saying, "Truly, you are the Son of God."
Stop here just for a moment. Okay, for a minute ago, I asked you guys to come up. Give me an example of Peter in your life, okay, where things were so low, and you reached out, and God caught you, okay? All right, I'm going to tell you one of the difficulties it is to be raised in Christianity, to be raised in the church, to have never had any great issues in your life, okay? In a sense, to have always had it made. Never really wanted for anything. Am I describing any of y'all's lives?
No.
I'm describing mine, okay? I'm describing mine. You know, I was born into the Church of Christ, okay? I was born into Christian belief. I never knew my great-grandparents well, okay? I was too little. But I knew my grandparents, and my grandparents they were godly people. They were church-going people that taught right and taught wrong, and their language was good, and I think their actions were good, okay? And there was never any question in my life that I was going to go to church. Never any of that. I mean, I can remember at the old church uptown, the old Moore Street Church. You know, I'm just a little bitty something up there. I can remember being there. That was my life. And when it came time, you know, I can remember telling Dad, I think I need to be baptized. They had that invitation every week, and I was baptized. But you know, I never had that Peter moment where I'm sinking and reach up my hand and say, "Jesus, get a hold of me." I just never had that. Okay, I never had that. Never anything like that that was dramatic. And I think about people that are in such deep holes in their life, and they come to know Jesus. And I think about the incredible turnaround in their life that we see, that you can see. You thank God for that. It's very dramatic. I think the reason that so many of us are not very deep and can very much be Christians in name only and not in act is because there's so many people like me who don't see themselves truly for what they are, needing to have their hands up. When they tell my story, they feel, if they're not careful, they can feel pretty good about themselves and don't realize how deeply they have been in need of Jesus. Living under a bridge that hasn't known Jesus, that doesn't have any education, that doesn't have this, doesn't have that doesn't have all the things that I've had, okay? Those people that really need to be helped by Jesus. Because, you know, see, for a little bit, I've come along and I've had all, I know who Jesus is and I appreciate Jesus. But, you know, I haven't needed Jesus like they have. Can you see how that attitude can come out in all of us? I mean, it's just something we really need to fight against. We all need to recognize that we all have Peter moments where, boy, if we don't stick up our hand and ask Jesus to save us, okay, we're in really deep water. We're in really deep water.
I think we fool ourselves sometimes in thinking that we did something that put us in a position to be blessed, and others don't do that. And we have to realize that what we have and where we are and all that is a blessing from God. It's not, we didn't earn it some way. And then what we have to then turn around and say, okay, God bless me now. What is He expecting me to do with that? Is it just enjoy it myself and just assume that I'm great and wonderful, or is it to turn around and He gives us that so we can bless others, not to bless ourselves.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
but you have to really think about that, because it's easy to look back and say, well, I went to school, and I got a degree.
I did
I
it all
worked
by myself.
hard.
Yeah.
I earned this, I earned that, and in the end, you think, I did it. Well, you didn't do it. It was straight from God, and
It's pretty easy to feel privileged, isn't it?
yeah.
Pretty easy to feel privileged. Privileged in a sense that you did earn it yourself. And there's none of us that are here because of ourselves, right? Is that fair to say? None of us are here by ourselves.
One thing I found interesting about what Jerry brought out, which I had never realized before, was about how the ocean was chaos. And I'm just thinking about the world today. I feel like there's chaos. And we are responsible for trying to rescue people who are in chaos. I think that's one of the things that Jesus would want us to do as believers, is to rescue those that are in chaos. And it's not an easy thing to do, as far as involvement of time and effort and disappointment when they may fall several times, and not be able to stand and withstand the chaos they've lived in all their lives. So the references to chaos, the seething chaos all through the Bible was very interesting.
So Margaret,
I guess it was a relation.
when you read the Old Testament, you read about a creature called Leviathan. Leviathan, and there's another description of another beast where a word beside Leviathan is used, okay? But the whole idea in ancient mythology was that the sea was chaos, okay? The sea always represents chaos. And I think this just follows through with that, yes. Yeah.
The Pepperdine lectures, I think it was 2017, was on the spirit and Jeff Wallen delivered an excellent three-part series about the Spirit. And he went back to Genesis, that in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. The earth was formless and empty, and darkness covered the deep waters. And the Spirit of God was hovering over the surface of the waters.
And what does the Spirit of God then do?
It speaks into creation.
It
It calms.
separates. It separates the land from the sea. Yeah, like one of the first acts. Yeah, good to know
It was
that.
an excellent series. Yeah.
That gives new meaning to me in Revelation. We were studying Revelation in a small group. And the sea will be no more. And I thought, oh, what would it be like without the oceans?
Yeah, yeah.
And the chaos, that gives that a whole.
That kind of flies in this,
Yeah.
in the face of weather and everything else that the sea does, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, but if the sea represents chaos, then chaos is no more.
and then chaos is no more.
That's right. Exactly right. Okay, well, I'm out of stuff to talk about.
I do think when you talk about chaos, we kind of think about our time having more chaos than other times. And you can't read the Old Testament or even time of Jesus and think, well, they didn't have chaos back then. Because they did. They had a ton of chaos going on.
When I was reading Herod, I was thinking, and you think we've got issues with marriage and divorce nowadays?
We hold up our time and think, oh, it's just awful how things are today, and it was so bad. But
Yeah.
you know what? They weren't great back then either.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. You know, if y'all could just take a couple things home with you in your minds today. One is, I think this chapter really is where Jesus turns it on in terms of who he is, okay? The people have a deeper understanding of Jesus here than they've ever had. And I was thinking, you know, it's not like he hadn't gone out and raised somebody from the dead or healed a bunch of people. The big deal was he quieted the ocean, he quieted the sea, and walked on the water. That looks to me like that's the sentinel event that triggered this understanding in their heads, okay? So Jesus has revealed himself in a way that he hasn't revealed himself before. And yet we know as we continue this, the disciples, they're still doing this. Believe, disbelieve, believe, great faith, little faith, great faith, little faith. And then the second thing that I want you to take from this is that we all need in everyday life, every aspect of our life, we need to attribute all that is good to God. And when we attribute everything that's good to God, we have worshipful hearts. We do that.
I don't know that you could, okay. You say everything that's good. I think we also need to realize when things are bad, that God is there. That's what we need to worship him for.
Oh, yes.
And I'm just saying that it is easy to say, oh, thank you, God, everything is so good, because that is being, honoring God for that. But I think about the poor and the ones that lack so much, maybe materialistically, or just are looking for the substance of food day to day to survive, and how if they were believers, they are thankful. We are called to be thankful to God for our lives, for him being in our lives, whatever state we're in.
Absolutely, Mark.
And I just think it's so difficult to imagine doing that, looking to survive day to day. If that was something that we faced. So, I think to say thank him for the good, yes, but then thank him for just being a child of his and knowing he's got us in his hands.
When I said good, I wasn't meaning to say good in the sense of a good situation or necessarily goodness, although that's part of it. I was thinking of something bigger. God is always good. God is always creator. It is always in God's hands. And I thank him for that. I thank him for that. And I hope my heart is repentant of the times where I have seen myself, or you've seen your own selves, somehow or another as needing God less than somebody else. So easy to do that. So easy to do that. We need just every moment of our lives, whatever, we need to see God as Lord of it. Okay, y'all have a good week. Y'all going back to Missouri today? I'm glad to have you here with us. And everybody try to stay healthy and pray for us next week.
Indeed, we'll be gone.
It's the craziest thing. So the Ackersons have done this many times, okay? So it's really great to have been able to pair with them to make this trip. So we order our tickets, and they come back, the plane comes back, and Margaret and they are going on one plane, and I'm going on another.
It wasn't by accident.
Now, way to go, Jim.
Now we know, now we know.
It's great planning.
God was in charge, I'm sure. Oh, see you guys.
That is the
I'm not as dizzy as I was.
Good.
Robert, thank you for yesterday.
We are.
That's okay.